My name is Dr. Dafter Khembo from DMI St. John the Baptist University, Malawi. My presentation is about enhancing higher order thinking skills through assessment. And in discussing this topic, we want to see how. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm starting, eh?
Yes,
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
We attend.
Yeah, so the topic is enhancing higher order thinking skills through assessment. And the main areas of discussion is to see the effects of assessment on learning, describe higher order thinking, explain the place of higher order thinking in Bloom's taxonomy, discuss the purpose of higher order thinking questions in education, discuss the methods of assessing higher order thinking skills, and discuss the relationship between higher order skills and lower order thinking skills, lots. Right. First, it is no longer enough for graduates to simply know it is important that they do more than just knowing. As we know, most jobs in the 21st century requires employees to think at a higher level. So universities must prepare students for that kind of life. This means that we need to adjust from the conventional teaching and assessing ways. We need to emphasize on the higher order thinking skills. So how do we get those? That's the purpose of our discussion today. The first thing to appreciate is that students learn what they think they will be assessed on. So it means that the way we assess our students will also affect the way they think. This is known as backwash, the effect of assessment on learning and teaching, backwash. Therefore, assessment is the engine that drives student learning. We can manipulate the way we assess students so that we encourage them, we motivate them to think at a higher level. Backwash effect can educationally be harmful or beneficial. That's where now we can use assessment for the benefit of our learners. So to begin with, there is harmful backwash effect, which occurs when the test content and teaching are at variance with the objectives of the course. And there is beneficial backwash, which happens when the test can
Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we
Hello.
attend. Yes, we attend.
Can I resume?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Oh. Uh-uh. Okay. Hello. So, full screen. Okay. So, because of the break, I needed to start from the first slide. So I was saying it is no longer enough for graduates to simply know the basics and skills. They need to be able to use these facts. Most jobs in the 21st century require employees to use the higher levels of thinking. And the universities must prepare students for that kind of life. So this means that lecturers must adjust from the conventional teaching and assessment that emphasizes low-order thinking skills, or simply LOTS, to the teaching and assessment that stress higher-order thinking skills, in short, HOTS. So students learn what they think they will be assessed on. Okay, so whatever is not assessed to them, it's not important. It is what is assessed that is important, and they'll focus on those things that are assessed. This is known as backwash. The effect of assessment on learning and teaching, that's backwash. So because of this effect of assessment, we can comfortably say assessment is the engine which drives student learning, because it is what is assessed that will tell them what to study and how to study. There are two forms of backwash. It can be harmful or beneficial. So harmful backwash occurs when the test content and testing techniques are at variance with the objectives of the course. Okay, so the way we assess and how what we assess will have an impact on the way students learn. Well, beneficial backwash is when the test can improve educational process and integrate all parts of course competences. That's beneficial to help improve educational outcomes. So well-designed exams can lead to improvements in educational quality because they have powerful backwash effects which can be harnessed. So we can use exams or assessment, to enhance, to promote learning. So the current concerns about assessment. As lecturers, we want students to learn throughout the year. But what do we see? They only learn or revise right before exams. Another challenge is we want students who pay attention to the entire curriculum, but they only pay attention to what they expect on the exam. We want students who understand and engage with the material. The problem is they only memorize facts. These are the things exams should try to address. So today we are talking about higher order thinking skills. So higher order thinking, or what, essentially means thinking that takes place in the higher levels of the hierarchy of cognitive processing. And many teachers and employers express concern that young people cannot think. So one of the main reasons some students do not achieve high academically is because teaching institutions do not always require students to perform at that intellectual quality, the high intellectual quality. So to be successful, students must master HOTS, or higher order thinking skills, which are in high demand by employers and projected to be increasingly in demand in the future. So the question is, how can assessment come in? First of all, we must appreciate why we want higher order thinking. First, information learned and processed through higher order thinking is remembered longer and more clearly than information that is processed through lower order thinking. So we want our students to remember information for as long as possible. But how do assessment bring this about? Knowledge obtained through higher order thinking processes is more easily transferable, so that students with a deep conceptual understanding of an idea will be much more likely to be able to apply that knowledge to solve new problems. Transferable. They should be able to apply information in different situations, not necessarily the same situation the information was presented to them, but they should be able to use that information at any situation. So how does one foster the kind of deep conceptual understanding that is transferable to various academic contexts, and perhaps more importantly, to real world problems. Okay, so our graduates should be able to solve problems of the world. And we believe that assessment can help that. So we want to quickly look at the relationship between higher order thinking and assessment. So one of the effective ways to help the students to attain higher order thinking skills is teachers' questions that can stimulate students' thinking process. The kind of questions we ask, the way we ask them, it's very important. So being asked low-level questions requires only low-level thinking. And that's not what we want. Students need to be stretched by the questions they are asked and the activities they engage in. So the process is based on the principles of Bloom's taxonomy. How does Bloom's taxonomy work? Through his study, Bloom, 1956, identified 3 domains of learning. There was cognitive domain, that is about knowledge, mental skills, affective domain, growth in feelings or emotional areas, and psychomotor domain, physical skills. All these domains are important for a rounded person. But it is the cognitive domain that is the subject of higher order thinking. And that's what we are focusing on. The cognitive domain is a hierarchical model that is several levels that categorize learning objectives into 6 levels of increasing complexity. And these levels range from remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. These are the 6 levels. And the first 3 of these are considered to employ lower order thinking. That is, remember, understand, and apply are considered to be lower level. But the top 3 levels are considered to be higher order levels. So I have put these in the increasing complexity to appreciate what happens there. We have remembering, that is recalling information, recognizing information, memorizing information. So at this level, you can recognize, you can list, you can describe, you can retrieve, you can name. That's at that level. Then we have understanding. That's the next level. You explain ideas or concepts. So you can interpret, you can summarize, you can paraphrase, you can classify, you can explain. That is the second level. The next level is apply. Applying the knowledge, the skills you have acquired. So using information in another familiar situation, like implementing. You have the procedure for implementing an activity, okay? Carrying out, or using or executing. These are some of the ways you can demonstrate your skills at this level, applying. But our focus is mainly in the top 3. You have analyzing. That is breaking information into parts to explore understanding and relationships. So at this level, you can compare, you can organize, you can demonstrate, you can deconstruct, you can interrogate, and so on. That is at our analysis level. Then you have evaluating. Okay, that is like justifying a decision or a course of action. Okay, you can check, you can hypothesize, you can critique, you can experiment, you can judge. And the last one is creating, generating new ideas of doing things. For example, if the process of doing something is very slow, okay, you should be able to design a new way of doing the same thing, but at a faster rate. So the top three are our higher order thinking skills. The bottom ones are the lower order. Now, what is how does Bloom's taxonomy, bring about the change we want? We want our students to think at the higher level. So in the course of teaching, we must implement higher order thinking skills. How do we bring about this change? Okay, so the theory of change is the mechanism by which an intervention brings about the desired change. We want our students to think at the higher level. So how does this happen? You implement higher order thinking skills. That's the intervention you are implementing. We think that if you do that, you are going to change the students' thinking. They're going to think at a higher level. So the result is students' higher order thinking skills. That's what we want. And this is how Bloom's taxonomy can help us to bring this change. So let's see how this works. As an example, we have here, at the remembering level, at the lowest level, you can list, for example, all the fractions you know. You just remember. That is in mathematics. List. If you use the verb list, you are asking the students to think at the lowest level. Then the next level, understanding. So you can ask the students to order the fractions you know, to put them in some order, decreasing or increasing order. So that is a bit higher than just remembering. You can also ask them to apply what they know. Find the fractions of a quantity. Okay, so there is a way of finding the fractions. So they just have to apply the method. At the next level, we have analyzing or analysis. So given a fraction of a quantity, find the total amount. So there is some kind of analysis taking place. At the next level, you have evaluating. In context, compare fractions with a variety of different denominators and come to a decision. And finally, we have to create, using knowledge of fractions, write a question given a context or a problem. Okay, that is creating. So these are the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. But our interest for this discussion is the top three: analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Can we make our students to think at these levels? How can assessment come in? First of all, let's look at key principles of assessment. We need to understand that assessment is more than grades, not just giving grades. There is a lot that goes together with assessment. So assessment is a mechanism for providing instructors with data for improving their teaching methods and for guiding and motivating students to be actively involved in their own learning. So it's more than just giving them grades. You are an excellent student. You are a very good student, and so on. It's more than that. Assessment is feedback for both instructors and students. As instructors, through assessment, we know whether our way of teaching is achieving the objectives of our lesson. And then even the students themselves, through the feedback we give, they know where they have gone wrong and how to get things right. And finally, assessment drives student learning. Okay. Whatever and however we assess will have profound impact on how the students learn. So the assessment methods that we use on our students will give them the idea of what is important to learn in the subject. If we use assessment methods that are only factual and knowledge-based, we might be promoting superficial learning. And in order to avoid this, we need to set our course goals, and these goals are the primary reason why we do assessments. Okay, so it is important that as we proceed with our discussion, we have these basic principles in mind. So how do we promote higher order teaching? There are a number of ways, and I'm just giving some of them. Okay, so the first thing is the relevance of Bloom's taxonomy. We have the top three levels. So if we are composing questions for our students that challenge them at levels 4, 5, and 6, that is analyze, evaluate, and create of Bloom's taxonomy, then our students will need to engage in higher order thinking to answer those questions. Brainstorming is another way to promote higher order thinking. This classic technique to elicit ideas from students is good to involve higher order thinking skills for students to practice. Okay. You can also use projects. Any project requires a lot of higher order thinking skills to complete. And the students have to organize their roles in the project, discuss, compare, contrast, and analyze ideas within the project. So when they're doing a project, they apply all these skills. You can also do debate. Before debate, students will analyze information, organize, prioritize, and plan how to present their ideas. That is higher order thinking. Then during the debate, they have to argue, debate, evaluate, and predict their opponent's ideas and summarize what their opponent said. Okay. Another way of promoting higher order thinking. And aligning examination questions with real-life scenarios. Okay. So they can see the relevance of what they learn in class to the real-life situation. So by incorporating real-life scenarios, exam questions encourage students to bridge the gap between theory and practice, so they can see the relationship between what they have learned in class and how that applies in the real-life situation. We can also promote higher order thinking through scenario-based questions. So this type of assessment involves presenting a hypothetical scenario where learners are expected to apply their theoretical knowledge and skills to solve problems or make decisions. Scenario-based. Okay. You can also promote higher order thinking through integrating multidisciplinary knowledge to address a particular issue. See, because there's what the students learn when it comes to applying the skills. It's not compartmentalized. It's not like this is for mathematics, this is for language. All these things are supposed to help the same person at the same time. So for exam questions, this should encourage students to integrate knowledge from various subjects and apply them to real-world problems. So knowledge from mathematics, knowledge from science, knowledge from geography, put it together to address a real-world problem. So integration is very important. This approach fosters a holistic understanding of how different fields intersect and prepares students for the interdisciplinary nature of modern industries. Okay. And then balance the difficulty. It is important to strike a balance between easy, moderate, and challenging questions when designing examinations. This ensures that students of varying abilities are appropriately challenged and assessed. So there are ways of ensuring balanced difficulty, which I tend to. Yeah, but before that, there are two key qualities of examinations. So for exams to contribute to quality education, they must themselves be of high quality. At a minimum, quality assessments are valid and reliable. I wanted to talk more about validity here. A valid examination is one that measures achievement of the intended learning outcomes. Okay. So when we are teaching, there are certain objectives we want to achieve. But there are two threats to validity. The first one is called construct under representation. Construct is what we want them to know, to learn. So construct under representation, which occurs when assessment is too narrow and fails to include important dimensions of the target construct. This means that the kind of exams that leave out important concepts. Okay. So there is under-representation of what they are supposed to know. So good performance can be achieved without demonstrating all aspects of the construct. That's construct under representation. Then there is construct irrelevant variance, which arises when good performance requires abilities not related to the construct. So we sometimes ask questions outside what the students are supposed to know. That is construct irrelevance. Sources of construct irrelevance include guessing, if the assessment type requires them to do kind of guessing, item bias, and testing irregularities. That is when the students or this are engaged in some kind of malpractice during examination. That is a testing irregularity. These can affect the validity of the exam. On the other hand, a reliable exam consistently yields the same results, regardless of the marker or the scorer or the test form or time of testing. So these are the two key qualities of a good examination. We will take the validity one a step further. In order to come up with a balanced assessment, we need to use a test blueprint, a test plan. So before we construct a test, we must first prepare a test plan, a test blueprint. Here I give an example. This example is based on a situation where all the units are given equal weighting or equal importance or equal value. So, for example, you have unit 1, you give the test is composed of 5 questions. So in that case, you have unit 1, 20%, unit 2, 20%, and all the questions, all the units have a weighting of 20%. That is on the content side. But then when it comes to cognitive side, okay, you have to decide how much weighting are you going to give the first level of Bloom's taxonomy, that is remember. How many or how much should this part be given? Okay, so in this case, you have a test of a total of 100. So for unit 1, you have remember, that is the lowest level, 2 marks. At the next level, that is understand, you have 3 marks. At the next level, apply, you have 4 marks. At the next level, analyze, you have 4 marks. At the next level, evaluate, you have 4 marks. And at the highest level, that is create, you have 3 marks, giving you a total of 20%. So you may do the same for the rest of the topics. But as lecturers or as educators, we know that it's not always the case that all topics will be of equal importance. So the topics we think are more important than others will have a higher weighting. Okay. So that's what I'm demonstrating in the next slide. So it depends on the lecturer. Okay, so this is a mathematics example. You have the first topic, expressions and equations. So under this topic, you have 1 mark for remembering, 1 mark for understanding, and 2 marks for applying, giving a total of 4. Because all the marks are out of 50, this will mean 80% of the test. Similarly, creating equations. You have understanding. Remember, there is nothing under remembering, but you have 1 mark for understanding, that is level 2, 2 marks for applying, that is level 3, 2 marks for analyzing, that is level 4. There is nothing for evaluation, but you have 3 marks for creating. A total of 8 marks for this topic, giving you 16%. So depending on the way you judge or you value the topics, Okay, so the marks will follow that pattern. Okay. So we quickly look at how we can frame questions that will assess students at the top 3 levels. That is, analyze, evaluate, and create. Under analyze, that is exploring connections and relationships by breaking things into parts. So the key words you use, you can ask them to analyze, you can ask them to categorize, you can ask them to classify, to compare, to contrast, and so on. That is at analyzing level. The kind of question starters or question stems, for example, why did X happen? Okay, so in case they were reading a passage, a comprehension package, so you want them to do or to analyze the passage, the story in the passage. Why did X happen? So they should be able to analyze and see why a particular event happened. What is the relationship between X and Y? That will require some analysis. What was the turning point? What were the causes of X? And what were the effects of X? These are the kind of questions you can use to assess students at the analyzing level. Then evaluating level. This is about defending or justifying our opinions and beliefs. The key words used are assess, choose, determine, evaluate, justify, compare, rate, and the rest of the verbs I have used in this. So your question stems or question starters. Why is it important that something was done, for example? Do you think X was a good thing? You know, you're using some kind of judgment, that is evaluating. Do you agree or disagree? But to do that, you need to justify why you agree or disagree. What was the writer's viewpoint on X? And what is your opinion on X? What is the best solution to the problem of X? By asking these kinds of questions, you are assessing your students at level 5 of Bloom's taxonomy, which is evaluating. Finally, creating. That is generating new ideas and alternatives. Okay, so education, before we talk about creating, we need to remember that education means making creators. That is according to the education psychologist Jean Piaget. You have to make inventors, innovators, not conformists. We need people who can design new things to make life better, to make life easier. So the keywords you can use: change, construct, design, develop, imagine, and so on. And the kind of questions you can use for this level: how would you improve X? So they must come up with new ways of doing the same thing. What changes would you make to X? How do you think X will feel? And these are the kinds of questions you can use to assess at this level. Moving on, I want to relate to what we have just discussed to 21st century skills. These are a set of knowledge, skills, and learning dispositions that prepare learners to succeed in a rapidly changing digital world in order to meet real-world challenges. As we said earlier, we need to prepare our students for this kind of life, the 21st century life. So there is a growing realization that the world of the future is going to be different from the present. That's obvious. And it will demand a new kind of people. We must prepare them for that life. Education is the passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. We must prepare our students today so that they can handle the future properly. Like technology should be made to penetrate into the system, teaching, learning, conducting examinations, and evaluating. These are some of the ways of the 21st century skills. There are 4 C's of the 21st century skills. And in our teaching and assessment, we need to include them. First, there is critical thinking. That is, if you think critically, it may be easier to make connections between different sets of information. So critical thinking is very important because we will need to connect things. Creativity can help you to develop innovative ideas to approach modern issues and situations. For example, you may identify a work strategy or policy that is no longer effective and use creative thinking skills to update it. Okay. And then there is a collaboration, working together. So working collaboratively can teach one to be more flexible and make necessary compromises for overall team improvement. So collaboration is a very important way of teaching higher order thinking skills. People need to work together. And to do that, it is necessary for our students to appreciate the idea of others and see how they link up with ours. And then there is communication as an element of the 21st century. That is, learning how to communicate effectively can help you explain goals, tasks, and expectations. This may mean your team has more consistent information and continues working well together. So these are some of the characteristics of the 21st century learner. Okay, they must be globally aware. They must be communicators. They must be problem solvers. They must be critically engaged. They must collaborate. They must be self-directed learners. They must be innovators. And they must be financially and economically literate. So in our teaching, let's make sure we are inculcating these characteristics, these qualities in our learners. And as we move towards the end, I want to quickly talk about assessment rubric. I think this part we can, okay. So assessment rubric is a systematic scoring guideline to evaluate the students' performance. It could be papers, speeches, problem solutions, portfolios, etc. And through the use of detailed description of performance levels. So what am I saying here? If, for example, your question is allocated 4 marks, that is the maximum a student can get. But we know that some students will not get to that level. So how do we decide whether a particular response deserves 4 marks or deserves 3 marks? deserves 2 marks or 1 mark. How do we make that decision? That's what assessment rubric is about, to guide you how many marks to award to a particular response. Here I give the example of oral presentation. A student is making a presentation. How do you rate the presentation? First of all, you must break down the key components of the presentation. Does she or he begin with greeting and end with farewell? How do you award the marks, the 4 marks? Okay, so for excellent, that is 4, the student greets and introduces the topic to the audience. The main idea is repeated at the end to sum up. He gets 4 marks for that component. But for 3 marks, the student greets and introduces the topic to the audience. The main idea is not repeated at the end to sum up. So if he doesn't do the same at the end, he loses 1 mark. Then for 2 marks, the student doesn't greet the audience, or the student doesn't introduce the topic to the audience, but the main idea is repeated at the end to sum up, 2 marks. And for 1 mark, the student doesn't greet, the student doesn't introduce the topic to the audience, and the main idea is not repeated at the end to sum up. So you can do the same for the other components. Organization, how is he organized in the speech? Body language, is it consistent with the points he is raising? The vocabulary, the materials, all these, it is you, the lecturer, to decide what components. But these are the key components in oral presentation. And this is what assessment rubric is about, because it is not expected that a response will get all the 4 marks or nothing. There will be some responses that will require or deserve some marks between the 2 extremes. So in conclusion, I am saying traditional exams with their narrow focus on the theoretical knowledge fail to adequately prepare students for real-world challenges. They fail to do that. Learners need to acquire skills they will need to cope with the demands of the 21st century. This means that learners must have an acceptable level of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity, besides other skills. And the success of efforts in equipping students with higher order thinking skills also depends on how teachers assess their students. We have discussed that. And the cognitive domain is a hierarchical model that categorizes learning objectives into 6 levels of increasing complexity: remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. Assessment can be used to promote students' higher order thinking skills by developing assessment instruments that emphasize those skills. Our assessment instruments must require or demand the students to demonstrate their skills at that level. And the first 3 of the 6 categories are considered to employ lower order thinking, while the last 3 are classified as higher order thinking. Thank you very much. This is what I had prepared for you. If there are questions or clarifications required, please, I am here. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
No? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. For our participant, if you have any question for the speaker, please add them to the chat or you can raise your hand. For first question, we have question from Mr. Abdullah. You can hear my
Yes.
voice? Okay. Yeah.
Yes. What is the question?
How can the use of assessment improve student higher order thinking ability? And what are effective strategy for integrate assessment to strengthen critical and creative thinking skill? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. As I said, there are several ways of promoting higher order thinking skills, and these include critical thinking. Okay, so the methods I shared in the presentation include assessing real-world situations. Okay, so if we prepare assessments that reflect the real world, we'll be promoting application of knowledge that has been acquired in class. We also talked about using projects. This method of assessment exposes the students to all types of higher order thinking. They have to decide how to tackle the problem. They have to be able to analyze the situation. They have to compare with previous results and so on. So using projects is an important way of equipping our students with the skills that they can use in the field, okay? To be able to analyze situations in the field, come up with a way of addressing challenges in the field. Okay. So we also talked about scenario-based questions. These are hypothetical situations from which you can ask students to come up with an explanation or a way of addressing problems. Hypothetical, yes, in class, but there is a high possibility that similar challenges, can be encountered in the field or in the world, wherever they live. Yeah. So that's how I think we can help our students to engage themselves at a higher level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And for the second speaker from Ms. Kinan, how can formative and summative assessment be used optimally to facilitate the development of higher order thinking skill? And what is the role of technology in improving the assessment process to promote higher order thinking skill? Thank you.
To get that. Sorry, could you say that again, madam? Sorry.
Okay. How can formative and summative assessment be used optimally to facilitate the development of higher order thinking skill? And what is the role of technology in improving the assessment process to promote higher order thinking skill? Thank you. For the question,
Okay.
read also in from
Okay.
chat.
Thank you very much. Okay. So formative assessment is very important. as we know, it happens in the classroom as the teaching and learning is taking place. So as the teacher is teaching, he can use the kind of questions that will require students to think at a higher level, not just remembering facts, but they should be able to explain things. Okay, they should be able to defend positions. The kind of questions we ask in the classroom as we are teaching, okay, should help the students to think at a higher level than just remembering facts. So the questions like, how did that happen? How could you have improved the outcome of a particular activity? So these kinds of questions are very important. And if we emphasize on these kinds of questions, we will be preparing our students to think, to always think at a higher level.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question from Mr. Seb. Is it possible that we can train our critical and logical thinking skill in a simple way every day? If yes, how can we do that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's very important. So when we are teaching, we always start from what our students already know and develop from there. So at the beginning of the lesson, we might just want to know whether they already know the basics of the concept we want to introduce. But as we proceed with the concept, okay, we bring in new ideas they did not maybe come across. So up to this point, we are introducing something new. We will be very basic at the start of the lesson. But as we move on, we become more complex. We introduce complex ideas addressing the same concept. So they should be able to look at the concept from various angles. Okay? If they have acquired the basic skills and we develop those skills to higher levels. So it is the way we progress from what they already know to what new things they should know. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for answering. I think it's very clear answer from Professor Ra. Okay, before I close this event, for our participant, please open your camera. I will take a picture on the count of three. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for your keen cooperation. Finally, we come to the end of visiting lecture today. We would like to thank you for Dr. Dafter Khembo for the wonderful information and sharing your knowledge. We hope this information will be beneficial for all participants. At least we hope to have more collaboration in the future with the MEST John Baptist University Malawi. The visiting lecture for today and here. We hope to see you soon. Thank you and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Thank you.